ultimately, moving intelligent is about moving with awareness. It's about moving with intent. So having a clear reason why you're rolling your yoga mat out today, or why you're going for a walk in the woods today. This can really help you to have an intelligent experience. It's about listening to our bodies, and then it's about learning to make the right choices for ourselves in a given moment.
You're listening to the Wisdom for Wellbeing podcast, the show that blends science and heart to bring you evidence-based tips and tricks for cultivating a healthy, wealthy, and meaningful life. Now, here's your host, therapist, yogi, and fellow full life balancer, Dr. Caitlin Harkis.
Hey there, welcome back to Wisdom for Wellbeing. I am really excited to be sharing with you today about the practice of yoga, of intelligent movement, and really, I think, on a deeper level about how we create an intelligent life, a life that is aligned with our sense of purpose, passion, and an expanded sense of self and sharing. We are talking with Dr. Andrew McGonigle today. So you might know him as Dr. Yogi. He does amazing work supporting individuals in cultivating an intelligent movement practice. He teaches anatomy for yoga teachers. And he's a really, I think, profound teacher in breath work as well, which we might also put under the banner of yoga, which Andrew will explain to you in today's interview. Dr. McGonigle has an amazing background. He'll share his story of moving from medical training to his work as a doctor, to stepping into fashion, to finding his way to the yogic world in which he is training and sharing now. I think that you'll really enjoy this episode if you have a mindful movement practice, if you're thinking of starting a mindful movement practice, if you have interest in the mind-body connection. We'll actually be exploring the vagus nerve and how that is enhanced through yoga, as well as how it actually supports you in moving into a state of rest and digest. One of the things that I really enjoy is how Dr. McGonigle explains boredom is really necessary in life and stress is really necessary in life. So listen out and let me introduce you to Dr. Andrew McGonigle, Dr. Yoga Now. Welcome to Wisdom for Wellbeing. I am delighted to get the chance to sit down with you today, morning here in Adelaide and the afternoon there in Los Angeles. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's lovely to connect with you. Just the miracles of modern day technology, eh? It's wonderful, isn't it?
100%. And I think there's the technology component. And then also this is where the beauty of social media comes in as well, because I first started seeing your amazing wisdom and sharings on Instagram and really resonated with the work that you're offering there.
Yeah, it's such a great way, isn't it? Just to connect with people from all over the world, often in a very kind of organic way. So yeah, it's lovely. I always enjoy just all the lovely connections that I develop with people through social media. It's so lovely, isn't it?
It is. It's really special. And I'm wondering, because you have a really interesting backstory as well that will lead into kind of our conversation today. But I'm just wondering if you could maybe share with listeners how it is that you came to sort of be a doctor and yoga, and how this kind of world unfolded for you, if you don't mind, just to give us a little overview.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, medical school is an amazing experience, but as I'm sure most of our listeners can imagine, it's a really stressful time, really stressful experience at the same time. And towards the end of medical school, I was finding that I was basically tired all the time. And I was nervous about becoming a doctor anyway, but I was also particularly nervous about, well, if this is how I feel as a student, what is actually proper working life going to feel like for me energetically? And a friend said to me, "Oh, have you heard about meditation?" Now, bear in mind, this is going back to like 2005 when meditation was not talked about in the breadth that it currently is. So I was like, yeah, I've heard of meditation. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is. It felt very kind of hippie and very kind of out there. And now it's just so common, which is amazing. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I ended up taking this meditation course, which happened to be transcendental meditation. And it just blew my mind. And it was my first proper, I guess, spiritual experience. And it opened this gateway into this whole new kind of realm for me. So I then started to work as a doctor, graduated medical school, worked as a doctor, found it incredibly stressful, had my meditation there as one of my kind of tools to just keep me somewhat anchored. But after less than a year, I ended up leaving the career. It just wasn't meant to be for me for so many reasons. And I just couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I was having persistent anxiety. I'd lost a lot of weight. And I was just like, yeah, like life's too short. This is not what I want to do. So unfortunately, I didn't have the luxury of knowing what I was going to do next. I had been on this conveyor belt, since the age of like 15, knowing, oh, like I want to be a doctor. And all of a sudden I stepped off this conveyor belt. So I ended up moving to Australia. I lived in Sydney and I worked in fashion. Now it's a very random trajectory, but basically I just focused on my transferable skills, and I had developed so many amazing skills as a medical student and as a doctor that really I was like, I can bring this to any career that I want to. And I focused on what I was passionate about, and I was like, yeah, let's give this a go. So I ended up having this really wonderful, successful career in fashion and lived in Sydney for 3 years. And on the way to work every day, I walked past this really special yoga shala in Potts Point kind of area in Sydney. And I ended up starting a regular yoga practice. And it just, it sounds a little bit cliched, but it really changed me from the beginning. I just felt physically better. I felt spiritually better. I felt mentally better. And it was a big part of me finding myself and deciding what I wanted to do with my life. And, and it was wonderful. And then after a few years of dedicated practice, I just had this epiphany, I want to become a yoga teacher. I could really see myself in that place. And I've always been a natural teacher. So even at high school, I taught other students in my class. Like they would come to me after school for like tuition. So and then I became a yoga teacher, and I've been teaching now for 12 years. And then I also became a massage therapist, and I was back assisting one of the courses that I had been on, and a student kind of casually said to me, have you ever thought about teaching anatomy? And I'd literally never thought about it. It was so obvious that I couldn't see it. And then I made a decision, this is what I'm going to focus on. So I've really been focusing on teaching anatomy to yoga teacher trainees and teachers, probably for the last, I want to say like 7 years. And this is what I kind of do full time now. I absolutely love it. So that is my journey from medicine to fashion to yoga and anatomy. So next I'm going to become a pop star.
I can't wait. Andrew, that's such an amazing story. And there's a couple of points that I think are really important for listeners there, that, the meditation came into your life at a time where you probably really needed that anchor point. And I guess we don't know, because it also sounds like, you've moved really flexibly in the world, but I wonder how, this big decision to kind of leave medicine might have been impacted by having had a space where, you had what we can term, a spiritual experience, perhaps a sense of something broader than yourself, to kind of let go of this anchoring to yourself as, and I'm sort of saying in air quotes, like a doctor, that had to be necessarily who you were, that, that rigid sense of self. It seems like you had a really flexible sense of self to step back and kind of look at what your transferable skills were and see who else you could kind of explore and move into in this world.
Yeah, the meditation was a huge part of that. It just gave me space, on a daily basis. It created space, almost like physical space in my life, where I could just pause
Yeah.
You know, I could just be, and it allowed me to start to really deeply reflect on who I was and where did those ideas come from and what matters to me, you know, really what I want my daily life to look like. So it was really profound, because I think often people can be intimidated by meditation and think, oh, it's all about clearing your mind, and oh, how can I ever do this? For me, it was just about being still, you know. And yes, and sometimes, you know, thoughts would come, which they're naturally gonna. And sometimes I kind of even let that process, like I didn't even try to like acknowledge it and then let the thought move. I sometimes I've just like, all I need this morning is 20 minutes of no stimulus. You know, I need just to be in a quiet space with my eyes closed, and I need to notice what comes up and let whatever needs to come up. And just having that as like a daily thing. And I tried to do it. I really did it twice a day. I did it before and after work. It was just life-changing, you know, because I think we all live such busy lives. And we wear busyness as a badge of honor, you know, and actually through stillness, so much creativity can come up, you know, so much processing can happen. And yeah, it was amazing. I don't know where I would be if I hadn't had that, you know?
Well, it really sounds like it was then instrumental in not just life changing, in some ways life saving. Like it sounds like what was going on in that rat race that you were in, you know, I ironically, you know, to support other people, which is beautiful, but that you were losing yourself in that sense. And, you know, you've found these amazing ways to support individuals in a holistic manner now, where it seems to me like you're able to really fill your cup and nurture yourself along the way.
Yeah, I've just learned to basically put myself first, because you can't support other people until you're able to really support yourself. And your meditation was a huge, like it was the starting steps of that, of gathering these tools through life that support me and allow me to, they kind of help me to continue like reveal who I am. You know, I think we you know, like I don't think these practices necessarily change us, but they peel away like the layers of the onion, so that we kind of keep reminding ourselves on a daily basis like who we are.
Yeah.
Because I think we just, all these filters and layers kind of get added on constantly, and we can lose a sense of self. We can lose a sense of purpose. And I think that's what these practices mean to me today, you know.
That's really beautiful. And anyone who's sitting here going, wow, like there's stuff that's going on in my life that's really tough, but like there's no way out. Like maybe it's just finding that 20 minutes, you know, to sit down, to be still, and to see what unfolds from there. That it's not, you know, asking someone immediately to, you know, let go of a profession or make dramatic change. It's just creating a little bit of space to sit and to tap into something deeper.
Yeah. And then I trusted then that the answers would come to me. You know, if I needed to make big changes, I just trusted that if I gave myself enough space, that it would all kind of fall into place, which it kind of has. And then, you know, I've always trusted. I remember getting ready to leave Sydney. I actually moved to London, and it was 2009. So it was like recession, you know, economy, all these issues. And I remember my dad saying, like, this is probably the worst time imaginable to like move to London and try to kind of create a new career for yourself. And I just remember saying, I'm not going to allow myself to like buy into that fear. I'm just going to trust this is the right decision for me. I've sat with this for long enough. And you know, and then I moved to London and created something, you know, again, successful for me, you know, based on my own ideas of what success is. Yeah. So
that's so beautiful. And it's interesting because at that point in time, so you were into your yoga practice very heavily, I'm gathering. And you had mentioned that yoga was like a place for like your spirit, your mind, and your body. So all of these arenas, these parts of self were coming together, and you were really filling yourself up. And it sounds like filling yourself up to the point that you were like very clearly going, no, I'm going to trust this. I'm going to trust I can, you know, let this unfold and make this work. And I'm curious about trust in the sense, because the way you teach anatomy is to me like so beautiful. You know, you talk about moving intelligently, and I'm wondering if maybe we can start into that, because that actually does require a bit of trust in one's self and one's sensing of one's experience. Could you speak to moving intelligently?
Yeah, and I think it's a journey for sure, and I think it's something that we can always work on, and we have to kind of cultivate it. You know, it takes time, it takes patience. But for me, because you know, on a given day or in a given moment, we need different things, don't we? So we might find that on a certain afternoon, we need to be energized, or we want to be energized. So it's about then finding a way to move that kind of feeds into that. Or we might just go, I need to be quiet, or it could be, I need deep rest, or it could be going, I really need to do something with my hips this evening, and I think that's what it is. So it's about learning over time to kind of tune in, to go inward really, and look at, what are my energy levels? How is my mood right now? How's my spirit? How am I feeling physically? And at the start, often we can go, I just don't know. I don't know that I feel anything. And then over time, we go on this journey where we start to go, oh yeah, I know that I feel a certain way today, but I don't have the words for it. And then maybe with practice, with listening to that, we go, oh, this isn't such a pleasant thing, or this was pleasant. And then over time, we basically find the language within to describe like how we feel. So it's a long journey. We have to start somewhere. And I think ultimately, moving intelligent is about moving with awareness. It's about moving with intent. So having a clear reason why you're rolling your yoga mat out today, or why you're going for a walk in the woods today, that this can really help you to have an intelligent experience. It's about listening to our bodies, and then it's about learning to make the right choices for ourselves in a given moment. And again, there's no like switch that you can flip and then all of a sudden, you're moving intelligently. It's just about trusting again that we have this innate intelligence, and it's about revealing that through practice, time, and patience, I guess.
That's so beautiful. So it's this tapping back into a wisdom. And I think it's like, for me, really interesting sitting here, like putting on my psychologist hat for a second, when you sort of describe that, in the beginning, we might not know what we're feeling. And that as we start to practice more and more, we might know we're feeling something, and then maybe be able to start to go, ooh, like not so great or better. There's a term in sort of psychological language, alexithymia, which is this inability to label, to notice our emotional experiences, which, in some cases is perhaps more neurological, but a lot of the time is something that's trained out of us if we're taught from an early age that our emotions, which are a physical experience as well, if we're taught not to feel, like, oh, suck it up, don't cry.
Don't cry.
We push all that stuff down, we push our feelings down, and that this actually correlates to like ill health in a lot of ways, that being able to label our emotions and express our emotions in a healthy manner is really associated with well-being and quality of life and mental health, all these markers. So it's interesting that there's another way of going into these feelings, is to start like an intelligent movement practice, that there's this intentionality. And even in the beginning, as you said, start somewhere and see what's kind of revealed. Like what a beautiful way to tap back into and build our emotional awareness alongside our physical awareness, because there's such overlap, isn't there?
Yeah, completely. And look, and what just came to mind when you were speaking is also, that could also look like a journaling practice, alongside this. So it could be like, I feel a certain way today, and I can't put my finger on it. So it could be like, freestyle writing, just like literally writing down everything that's on your mind. But that works really well for people. What works for me personally, it's not necessarily going to work the best for everyone else, is getting on, like rolling the yoga mat out. You're going to feel a certain way, and then when I'm able to like have some stillness and then start to move my body, often I'm able to go, all right, this is what's coming up for me today. Here's that pattern again, or here's that feeling again, or here's that trigger that's coming up, and so it's about having different tools to help us can tap into that.
Love that you refer to them as tools. So listeners, like, think of this as tools, like figuring out what tool is going to be most useful for you in the situation. And I also love the idea of thinking of a yoga practice almost as like a journaling exercise, like seeing what the body is telling and unfolding, because so much of our physical experience, is this really stored wisdom of our life experience, and something that we can, heal through movement of, if it is done in a safe and intelligent manner.
Yeah, completely. And I now keep my journal beside my yoga mat. So because so much stuff comes to me, really wonderful ideas or questions come up or answers to things come up. So I keep my journal there, and I'll often pause during my practice and like scribble some stuff down and then go back to the practice. So I find it, just a really kind of revealing time in my day, and a really often a really creative time.
And you used creativity earlier. You mentioned creativity and meditation as well, like the spaciousness that seems to open up and unfolding.
Yeah, because I think, it's, I think the term boredom has a really negative connotation, but basically boredom is highly underrated. Like, we actually need to be bored. Like, our nervous system needs to be bored. And essentially what that means to me is just kind of understimulated for certain periods of time, because if you think about it, we're constantly stimulated by artificial light, noise, vibrations, frequencies, like everything that's going on around us. And I think to allow ourselves to be bored is really powerful and can allow a lot of stuff to come up. So can you go for a walk and just not bring your phone and not have your earphones in? Can you just, again, it's just all about creating space, isn't it?
Yeah. And how beautiful. I'm going to think of boredom as a tool now.
Yeah, boredom is a tool.
Cultivate.
I think,
yeah.
And I think, think back to when we were kids, when you were bored, often you would come up with some really cool way to entertain yourself, we didn't have Netflix, and we didn't have Wi-Fi, we didn't have internet, but when I didn't have internet at home until I was like 17, and so it's just, and again, we've kind of lost, in a way, we've lost that skill, and we all could do with kind of like disconnecting for part of our day, couldn't we?
Makes a lot of sense to me. And it even, in terms of when we think back kind of the wisdom that's unfolded through your journey, it was like these periods of spaciousness, I think, that by the sounds, like, often refilled your cup and gave you a place to slow down enough to sort of tap back into a values, a broader sense of self, and to make your next move. If you were managing the discomfort, the distress of the experience you were in by constantly reaching for the phone and grabbing, a dopamine hit that way, and a distraction, a way of disconnecting, I wonder how much longer you might have stayed on a path that wasn't for you, and how your physical, emotional, spiritual health might have suffered as a result, your vitality, if you hadn't had that space to tap into something broader.
100%. I'm just so grateful that, these practices came to me at the right time. I'm so grateful for that. And I think my life would look very, very different. And it's why I love sharing all these things so much. I love sharing these tools. And, when I teach anatomy, it's not about learning the names of all the muscles and bones in the body. Like, that's fine, that's great. It's helpful for like a pub quiz or something, or if you really want to like show off as a yoga teacher or something. But really, it's a way to like remind people how amazing, intelligent, kind of miraculous their bodies are, to kind of ignite that fascination in themselves. So I think, it's something, so I share my experience, through how I teach now. And I really love that.
Coming back to that, because listeners may or may not have like a base level of anatomy, but may be interested in a movement practice. And we talked about sort of coming with intent and this awareness of what's going on, and really kind of moving into the space of what does your body need? How could listeners start a movement practice, whether it's a yoga practice or going out walking without earphones in or whatever it may be? How could they do this if they do have, injury in their body, or, perhaps a history of trauma, knowing that when we talk about journaling and kind of life experience held in bodies, some of this stuff sits here and we want to move into and move through in a safe manner. How do we start?
Yeah, it's just it's starting small, and starting regular. So if you want to start a yoga practice, for example, I think the great thing is that there's so much amazing stuff online nowadays, and really I think it's remembering that teachers are just there to offer guidance, and really at the end of the day you're going to have your own unique experience. So it's trusting that you have to, at the end of the day, you're the one that has to take ownership for your practice. So yeah, it's about really sensing into how different movements feel. And if something feels painful, it's completely okay to back off. You can still make a movement, but make it smaller, or make it more, make the movement more slowly. I think also, when it comes to feeling pain or unpleasant physical experiences in the body, I think it's important to know that pain does not always correlate with tissue damage. So often we can think, if something feels painful, I am doing physical damage to my body. And in most cases, that's not what's happening. So it doesn't mean, therefore, we should just push through that and always feel in a place of discomfort. But it's being okay to be playful and kind of play with the edges of these sensations. I don't think yoga is a time to really sit in a place of pain. I think maybe if we're working with a physical therapist or something like that, sometimes feeling pain during an exercise is actually okay, and it's actually part of the recovery process. But so again, it's just learning to trust your body. Know that no movement is inherently bad. Trust in your own inherent wisdom, and also reflect. Like if you've done a movement practice at home, afterwards reflect on how it felt for you. Notice how it feels the next day, and use that as a kind of as guidance. And always know that you can use your breath as a marker. So if you're in a certain position or making a certain movement and your breath feels labored, or it feels difficult to breathe fully, there might be a better position for you, that you can adjust yourself into, where you can breathe a little bit more fully. So it's just knowing that we have all those tools again at our disposal, and it's just trying not to be fearful.
So that's starting small, and also the reminder that pain is not inherently a bad thing either. I think that's really interesting, because in our society, we are phobic of anything that feels uncomfortable often.
Yeah.
And we try and push away, whether that's an uncomfortable emotion that comes up or an uncomfortable sensation. But that maybe if we don't have that lens, if we kind of explore it in finer detail and, check in with our breath and where we're at, it's not always going to be that, we're ripping, tearing, damaging something. It could just be that it's an uncomfortable new sensation.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's actually, look, injuries in yoga can happen, but basically, typically for an injury to happen, we need speed and we need external force. And, yes, in yoga, we do use our body weight quite a bit, but I just think, and the great thing is there's a lot of studies nowadays that look into injuries and yoga and compare them to different activities. And actually yoga is pretty safe in a general term. Look, all movement comes with a risk,
for sure,
a risk of injury. And different activities and different movements will have different risks. But just also knowing that it's going to be low risk, and Yeah, and if your body's speaking to you, listen to it and respond accordingly, and that can take time, and that's when the guidance of a teacher can definitely be helpful. You can reflect to the teacher what your experience has been, and they can maybe offer some guidance.
Yeah, so some journaling work perhaps to kind of look at how you felt before, after, the next day, working with a teacher for a little bit of support, going slow in the beginning, building up that knowledge. And then it sounds like, as our awareness of self, and our physical experience deepens, maybe we move into bigger shapes or different shapes or more dynamically. You mentioned breath as a marker, and I'm really curious because you have amazing wisdom around breath. So yoga is not just the physical shapes that we're making then.
Yeah, I think, for any of us at home who have a regular yoga practice, I think we know that. I think we recognize it in ourselves that yoga is so much more than the physical shapes that we're expressing. I think it can be very easy to, particularly through social media and marketing, to link yoga to a specific position or movement. We've become very focused on what yoga looks like, and really it's not about that. But yeah, yoga is so much more. Yoga is it can be thought of as a philosophical practice or discipline, and the asana, the physical practice, is part of that. And often what is referred to are the 8 limbs of yoga. So the first 2 limbs, the yamas and niyamas, are really a way about they're kind of like an ethical code in a sense. It's how we look at ourselves and how we look at others, how we treat ourselves, how we treat others. And then there's the asana, the physical practice, is pranayama, which is the breath, which is controlling the breath. And then there are other disciplines within that. Yeah, so yoga is so much more than the physical. And the nice thing is that it's okay to go to a yoga class purely for the physical. And what happens is these other wonderful elements often like creep up on us, so we get like more, we get more for our money. we get all these bonuses.
Yeah. That's a really nice reminder that that you can start for the physical or explore it for that element. If your body is feeling, not so many of us sitting at desks and things these days, that if your body isn't feeling great, maybe starting to get a form of safe movement into your life, and that these other elements might creep in.
Yeah, completely. And the breath is just so powerful. Our respiratory system is the only system in the body that has both involuntary and voluntary control. Yeah, so if you're daydreaming on the sofa, you're still going to be breathing, but then you can go to yoga and do actual breathing practices where you control the length of the inhale or exhale, where you control the pauses between the inhale and exhale, and play and manipulate the breath in these ways. So really then we can use the breath as a gateway to interact with all the other systems inside the body, particularly the nervous system. And this is one of the reasons why the practice of yoga is so powerful. It's powerful for many, many reasons, but we can actually end up changing our physiology, like through the way that we breathe. So it's super powerful.
It sounds like one of the most powerful tools to literally be able to change, an unconscious system, right? Generally, we do think our nervous system is an unconscious system, but here you're saying, you can consciously, deliberately change your flow of breath, and the rest of the system's going to be altered as well. Like, how empowering, and what a different way than just like that disconnect that we often are prone to or have sort of been taught in our society.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And during the pandemic, I started a more regular breathwork practice with a friend. Held space and ran these workshops. And I believe that breathwork is simply a Western way of saying pranayama. So pranayama is the word we would use in yoga. And I believe that a lot of breathwork is very much based on different pranayama practices. But yeah, so it's been a while since I have done like dedicated breath work, and it's so powerful. You feel your whole nervous system reset. You can feel your whole body tingle. It's almost like it's kind of rewiring itself in a sense, and it's wonderful. And it was, again, another, I'm going to use that word, tool. It was just such a wonderful tool through the pandemic, to help me feel anchored and help me feel like a deep sense of rest. It was really wonderful. So again, I'm really grateful that kind of came into my life at that time.
Yeah. And listeners maybe are sitting there thinking, oh, I'm grateful I'm hearing this right now. This is something for me to explore. And there's some beautiful benefits. So you've kind of mentioned the nervous system reset. And I know you're quite knowledgeable on the vagus nerve, and really, I guess, would you mind explaining to listeners what the vagus nerve is? And then maybe we could lead into some ways that yoga or, yogic practices like, even an eye pillow might support our vagus nerve sort of tone, essentially.
Yeah, sure. So the vagus nerve is a cranial nerve, which means it doesn't exit the spine, but actually exits the skull. And the term vagus is Latin. It essentially means wandering. So basically, this is a long nerve that innervates part of the face. So it innervates part of the brow, the outer ear, and then it travels basically down the throat and innervates most of the organs in our body, other than the adrenal glands. And the vagus nerve is part of our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest response, which is what balances out the fight or flight response from the sympathetic nervous system. So, stress can have a negative connotation again, but it's something that's totally vital for our survival. It's just that currently in the life that we're living, what tends to happen is that the stress dial is kind of turned up for a lot of people. The parasympathetic system is always going to be there in the background, but we can use yoga practices, pranayama practices to basically switch up the parasympathetic dial, switch up the rest and digest, and create a little bit more balance. So when we say we're doing more of a restorative practice and we're in Shavasana on our back, we can use a slightly weighted eye pillow. And when we put weight on the eyeballs, it has been shown to stimulate part of the vagus nerve, which is really exciting. And basically, the breath is one of the key ways. So when we inhale, our heart rate increases, and when we exhale, our heart rate decreases. And that's just a natural phenomenon that's completely recognized in the medical world. So in yoga, what we tend to do is we tend to focus on lengthening the exhale. And what this does is it slows the heart rate. And then the vagus nerve picks up on that. And it's a two-way system. So part of the vagus nerve picks up on this slowing of the heart rate and sends messages back to the central nervous system and allows us, the central nervous gives us permission to go into rest and digest. It feels safe, essentially. And then the other beautiful thing about yoga is yoga creates a sense of community often. And so much about feeling safe is about being able to be vulnerable with people around us, having meaningful interactions. And again, when we feel safe in that way, this can help to switch up the dial of the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you're going to like a kirtan where you're doing yogic chanting, not only is the chanting and the prolonged exhale stimulating the vagus nerve, but that sense of community and building meaningful relationships all feeds in to one another. So you get a double whammy again. You get your bonus. You get all these bonuses we get.
So beautiful. And this like idea of chanting in time, breathing in time, moving in time with people. And I think one of the things that, in the world in lots of places is starting to come out of lockdown. Australia is starting to go into lockdown. We're a little bit on a different schedule, but, that yoga studios have offered like real time classes so that even if you can't physically be in proximity with people, that you can have, people up on your screen and you're still in this community, creating community. I think that's really quite powerful when we look at how we do manage that perceived social disconnect in these very unusual times? Because it is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think that sense of community and having, again, it's all about meaningful interactions with people. And that can also go beyond, obviously, the yoga studio. It can be meaningful interaction with your partner, with family, with neighbors, with colleagues. So, yeah, whenever we feel that we're able to be vulnerable with people, then, and there's a guy who's this expert on the vagus nerve, is called Stephen Porges, and he says it's all about, I'm probably going to paraphrase, but it's about, I think he says something about being comfortable in the arms of another, so allowing ourselves to be held by someone else, is a great way to stimulate the vagus nerve. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. So that vulnerability and that sense of safety of being able to let go and trust again.
Yeah.
Healing. Yeah. So how can, listeners, if they have not got a, yoga practice, a mindful movement practice, a breathing practice, anything yet, where can they start? Like what's the easiest avenue forward from here?
I think there's just a lot of great resources out there, whether it's on Instagram or on YouTube, or whether it's trying to connect with a local studio. It's just seeing what resonates with you and knowing that there's just a lot of great tutorials and classes out there, and yeah, just see what kind of vibes with you. I think that's a good place to start, and then over time, you could maybe then start your own kind of self-practice, whether that's a breathing practice or a movement practice. But I think at the start, it's always nice to get some sort of guidance, and maybe not too long in the future, we can go back to having like physical classes again and things like that. But yeah, I would have a look, if you enjoy social media, definitely, have a look on there. I actually do these little posts every Monday where I do like a short practice, and it can be like 2 minutes. It could be like a jaw release or a neck release or something. So, there's tons of stuff like that online, and yeah, just to have a look out there and see what resonates.
Could you actually let listeners know where they can connect with you, where they can tune in for their Monday sort of reset?
Yeah. So my, the best place is probably like Instagram or Facebook. So I'm at Dr. Spelt Out Yogi. So that's probably a good place to come and join me. Yeah, I put, I really enjoy sharing on social media. So share a lot of, good content. So
yes, and it's so generous. So at Dr. Yogi, and Andrew, your website?
Yeah, so it's Dr. Spelt Out -yogi.com.
Yeah, and listeners, I'll be putting it all in the show notes, but you also have a mailing list where people can keep up to date with
people can,
the offerings you have too.
Yeah, I do. So I do these regular myth or fact like emails that I send out like every 2 weeks. And basically, I think, not everything in the yoga world needs to be evidence-based. Not everything in the world needs to be evidence-based. But I think what I found over the years is that there's just a lot of kind of unsubstantiated claims made about, oh, do this pose and it's going to help with this thing. And often that's completely anecdotal, or there's literally no evidence whatsoever to kind of back it up. So I don't want to take away from like the yogic traditions, but I'm adding another perspective so that people can maybe think just a little bit more critically. So I do like a kind of myth busting newsletter that goes out. So people seem to enjoy that. Yeah, you can sign up via my social media or via my website. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and I think, that's one of the things that is really important, I think, is kind of knowing where there's evidence and where there's not, and having this ability to kind of look at the two. So listeners, if that's your jam as well, I certainly resonate with it, and I love watching, because you also share some of it on Instagram and social media, as well as in the emails. Like, following someone who has the knowledge to unpack these things is really useful. And then, as you said, it's not everything. So having one's own experiences and journaling and reflecting, there's another side to the practice, but this might be useful and interesting too.
Exactly. And I think I just want to help people to figure out for themselves how to think and how to kind of find their way through things, and I think, a good thing to notice is that no matter how experienced a yoga teacher is, they can't ever tell you what's best for you. Like, you have to figure that out for yourself. So I think often people will go to your class and want to be told what to do, but really, again, it's just guidance, and you have to take the kind of ownership to be willing to be flexible with that, pun intended, and because everyone's obsessed with flexibility in yoga. You have to be flexible to work with that, but also, and then be willing to like move beyond those boundaries to figure out what's kind of good for you.
I think that's a really nice sort of note to finish up on as well, isn't it? This idea of, you know what's best for you, and when you may go to a yoga practice, kind of honoring that. So if something's suggested or offered, that you can kind of tap in and go, well, maybe not today, maybe that's not feeling where it's at for me, or maybe I'll add a little bit more to this, whatever it may be. But working to cultivate that sense of self and awareness in terms of what we need really links back to that intelligent movement practice. And from there, all of these intelligent moves that we can make in our lives, even if we don't know exactly where it's going, stepping away or stepping into different things that light us up and create a sense of vitality.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. Listeners, head to the show notes to grab the links and to connect with Andrew. And of course, follow along and enjoy the myth busting with me.
Yes, please do. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. No doubt you are reaching for an eye pillow, a mat, and a journal now. I really love the concept of these practices being tools, things that we can use in our lives to check in, as well as to cultivate health and well-being, our physical, emotional, and spiritual. So, of course, head on over to dr-yogi.com to connect with Andrew there, as well as on Instagram, Facebook at Dr. Yogi. Everything will be in the show notes, so you can just head to drcaitlin.com and grab links to follow up further. I wish you well. I wish you health and movement, intelligent movement, and really this opportunity to explore what's showing up for you and to heal in a safe manner. So making sure that you are taking care of yourself as you move forward in this journey. All right, I will let you go. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll look forward to connecting with you in the earbuds soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Wisdom for Wellbeing podcast. Please visit drcaitlin.com to connect, find show notes, other episodes, and to subscribe. While you're at it, if you find value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating, or perhaps simply tell a friend about the show. Wisdom for Wellbeing is not a substitute for professional, individualized mental health treatment. If you are in crisis, please contact 000, your local emergency number if you are outside of Australia, or attend your local hospital ED.